Welcome to Cooking Tablescapes with Mary Waserstein. Today we're going to do a beautiful dish of Monkfish Provencal. Now, I know that we have all heard about Provence and the flavors there, and they're this wonderful kind of like summery mix of basil and thyme and lavender even, and fennel, and then of course some of the base vegetables are tomatoes, eggplant, and zucchini. So today we're cooking monkfish, which I absolutely adore. It's this wonderful local fish, and if it's not local in your area, you can certainly replace it with a white flaky fish. And what I love about monkfish, as someone who is allergic to lobster, I use it as a substitute for lobster, which is wonderful. But here you can see it, and it's wonderful. And what I did was I picked two fillets right here, so they're evenly matched, and I just tucked these little tails underneath. And so that way we're saving on the fish, and it makes sure that everything's going to cook evenly. So what you want to do is we're going to have this, and then it's going to end up on a bed of effectively a ratatouille, which is a melange of vegetables with herbes de Provence, shallots, tomatoes, zucchini, and eggplant. So we want to give the fish as much flavor as possible. So we're going to start it in the oven. We have a hot oven going. I have it at about almost 400. I like roasting. Some recipes call for a little bit lower. It's going to basically cook almost all the way through, and then we're going to finish it in. So to start, we're going to put a little bit of rosé. Just remember, you only cook with things that you're actually going to drink. This is a lovely white rosé. It's a table rosé. It's nothing fancy, but it's still very drinkable. So we have some of that on the bottom, and then on top, you want to make sure that you season with salt. And we're just trying to get as much flavor into the fish as possible. So the salt is going to go in. It's not overly salty, just a little bit. Fresh black pepper. And this is where we're going to start adding our aromatics. So I have a yellow onion right here, which I'm just going to slice up very casually. The nice thing about this dish is that it's not fussy, and you can make the vegetable component ahead of time. So I really recommend that highly. All right, so look, we're gonna slice out the onion, and then what we're gonna do is just take this raw onion and sprinkle it on top. Now, this is not gonna make the fish taste oniony. What we're adding are the traditional aromatics, and so that's a very helpful thing to see. And there we go. Wonderful. Okay, great. So I think that's enough in there. I am then gonna take 2 bay leaves, and here we go. We got these going. These go on top, and then we can, let's sprinkle a little bit of this herbe de Provence, which is that mix of basil and thyme and fennel seed and lavender. We often don't think of lavender as being an herb we cook with, but this is certainly something that we can. And then I also have right over here some fresh thyme. And I mean, what is more fabulous and bright than all these flavors? So this is going to pop in the oven, and I'm just very casually putting this on top. It's not overly thought out. And this is going to go in the oven while we work on the other parts of the recipe. So here we go. Perfect. Pops into a nice hot oven, which is waiting. You always want to make sure your oven is waiting for you and you're not waiting on your oven. Put some of these side bits away. And the next thing we're going to be serving, and then we're going to get to our ratatouille kind of vegetable melange thing, is that we're going to serve this with roasted herbed vegetables. And we're going to do that on a bed of watercress or any green that you like. So I have here new potatoes, and this is really the secret. It's taken me a very long time to realize the secret to really lovely potatoes that are creamy inside and crispy on the outside is you cook them ahead of time. And when I say cook ahead of time, these guys are really cooked all the way through. So this is not par cooked, this isn't like occasionally cooked, this is properly cooked. And what's nice about using this technique is the potatoes can really be made ahead of time. So it's nice to have meals like this where if you're expecting people or your life is a little hectic. I have 4 kids and multiple dogs and a husband, and things are a little wild around my house. I like recipes that I can prepare ahead of time. So what we're going to need for this is I like to add a little garlic on there. And it's always nice when you're cooking a meal to think about how you're going to there can be repetition of flavor. And it kind of what that help does is think about it as the way you would have, like if you're designing a room or a tablescape, you maybe have a color theme to it. You want to make sure you don't get any of that paper from the garlic in there. You want to basically have a commonality, like you want everything to work together. So instead of there being a common color, in cooking what we have as a common flavor palette. So I have some garlic, which I've just kind of like lightly minced, nothing too special. And I hate doing dishes. I don't know about you. So a lot of how I prepare my food is limiting the number of dishes I use. So right here, I've got an olive oil. You can use whatever brand you like. Pretty generous because you want these guys to get a nice crisp on them. We are then gonna add the garlic. And look, if you're one of those people that really hates garlic, and I understand there are people like that, you can skip the garlic and you can add in, you can really season these however you want. Salt, you do wanna add a little more salt than you'd expect with potatoes. Potatoes are very mild in flavor. I'm gonna do a couple turns of black pepper. And you know what, why not? Let's throw some of this fresh thyme in here because we're picking up the thyme we have on the fish, which is in the oven right now. It's gonna have a nice carryover between the two parts. So we've got this going, which is really nice. There we go. All right, and then I'm just gonna toss this with my hands. You know, there's no reason to stand on occasion. And we're gonna throw those in the oven. And again, those guys have been really beautifully pre-cooked. They've just been, what I do is I put them in a pot. I don't put salt on them because I wanna season them when they come out, and that can get a little overly salty. So they're just in enough cold water to cover them, and then I cook them on a pretty heavy simmer until they're cooked all the way through, okay? So this is gonna go in the oven with our lovely, they just fit in our lovely fish. Okay, so that's in there, and the fish is gonna cook for about 15 minutes on its own. All right, so while that is all in the oven, and you can see how casual this whole meal is, we are now gonna do the vegetables, which again is very similar to a ratatouille. It has those kind of flavors. And I have pre-cut, instead of onion, I am using my garlic. I'm using shallots rather. So I'm gonna throw some shallots. I'm gonna put some olive oil in here. You wanna soften the shallots up nicely beforehand. So let's get these in there. Hopefully there's some temperature. It's always good to hear that little whatever. And you can see right there that they're not particularly finely cut. They're just, that's 3 shallots that are in there. And you just wanna get to the point where you soften them. You can monkey around with the heat a little bit. You know, it's always interesting cooking on a stove you don't use all the time. So there we go. And then what's gonna go into this, we have all these yummy things over here, is we have zucchini, we have red peppers that are cut up, and then we also have eggplant. And I held off doing the eggplant because eggplant does this thing where it'll actually kind of brown out, it oxidizes, which is not great. Let's get a little more temperature. Great. And then we just want to take the skin off of the eggplant. You can do this with a peeler. I do this very casually because I like to leave a little bit of the skin on. I like how the taste is. It can be a bit much if you leave all of it on there. And what we're really going for here is bite sizes. I mean, think about what size are you going to want to eat when you're serving this? Like when you take a mouthful, you really want to get a bite of the fish and all the different vegetables. So again, this is a much more casual dinner. And the fact that it's not preciously cut, there's flexibility in how you cut your veggies. And then, there we go. I'm gonna break this into thirds. And I'm just trying to get these guys a little more heat. There we go, fabulous. And just make sure they're kind of scooting around. And we just want these to soften up a little bit. All right, so the eggplant, while I'm waiting for that to soften, I am going to cut my eggplant, and I literally just do it almost in a grid. So I cut across, 2 cuts, and then I break it down like this. And you can see that the eggplant will oxidize. This is kind of an interesting fact about an eggplant, is that when there's seeds in it, it means it's a female eggplant. So there are a lot of people who think that male eggplants are less bitter, and you can actually tell the males and the females because at the bottom of them, there's a little, if there's like a little X, like a little, where there was a bud, that's a female eggplant. Just kind of random, dorky, gardening, plant cooking stuff. Alrighty, so look over here. We've getting a little color on our shallots. They're starting to soften up a little bit. Shallots, if you haven't cooked with them before, are of all the oniony family, they're definitely a little sweeter. And they're not as assertive of flavor, and so that they're lovely. I will cut them up raw and put them into a vinaigrette, which is a kind of very French thing. So we're starting to get enough heat on here. And what I'm gonna do is put in the zucchini, which was just cut into rounds. We wanted to kind of keep its integrity. We don't want it just to turn into mush. We are not looking for veggie mush. And once I've added all my vegetables, then I'm gonna start seasoning it up. Because I don't wanna add, let's get like the salt and pepper in on the last moment. Great, so here we go. This is looking really good. All right, so we're getting a high heat, which is always exciting. There we go. This should be, oh, we're gonna make sure we have it where it's as hot as possible. All right, so now we are gonna season it with salt and pepper. We're gonna let this cook down just a little bit. Yeah, here we go. Fabulous. All right, we wanna get this high and going, and we're gonna finish this in the oven. And this is where we're gonna start adding those layers of Provence in here. And I also, I'm a big fan of adding fresh herbs. So these guys are getting as much heat as possible. Yep, there we go. Let me make sure the outer is kind of, yeah. Let's make sure it's getting all of it cooked as quickly as possible. I'm gonna grab some of this fresh parsley over here, and flat leaf parsley is something that I really, oops, let me get a scissors. Those stems are a little tougher than I'd anticipated. Flat leaf parsley is just a wonderful thing to add in. Great. And I've rinsed this. I keep this types of stuff on my counter all the time. They're just a great way to add a little brightness. Again, just kind of a rough top. I like this, the stems and the stalks, so I keep them on there because the thing about it is they're loaded with flavor. You're going to cook it and it's going to break down. I'm just doing the occasional, you know, walking it back over so it's not, you know, you don't want someone to feel like they're getting a giant mouthful of parsley. You want it to be there, but you know, it's not a terribly fine mince. It's easy. And then I'm going to take it and put it in here. Perfect. All right. The next thing that's going to go in, let's get this all kind of, and you can hear it sizzling away and it's getting happy. The one thing about eggplant is it is kind of a sponge. So it's a bit of an olive oil hog. So if there's oil in there, that's why I added it last. It's just going to swoop it all up. All right. Here we go. Perfect. All right. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the herbs of Provence. And I would say we're putting in a healthy 2 teaspoons, right? There we go. Perfect. Excellent. Wonderful. Okay. And you can smell all the flavors being released. I mean, these dry herbs, and they're all different people who do blends of herbs of Provence, and it's this basic thing. All right, so next what we're going to want to add in there is a small can of whatever brand you like of chopped tomatoes. And just making sure there wasn't peppers in here. And what this does is kind of give a nice saucy base right there. So here we go. Add it around. Perfect. And that kind of, it adds a little moisture to it so that we're going to put our fish in this beautiful luxe, effectively, sauce. So I'm keeping an eye on the time. The fish has been in there for about 12 minutes. And again, I don't want it to cook all the way through. All right. And we're going to get this going. That's really beautiful. And you know what? Why not? Let's put a little swoosh of rosé in there too, because it really kind of will add a little extra something, okay? So just a little turnaround. I would say that's not even 2 tablespoons, just a little. And again, guys, we're pulling flavors together. That's what we're working on. So let's get this heat going. I don't know if this burner really loves me as much as I think it does. Oh, there we go. It should. So we'll let this sit for a second. We should really get some nice heat. One of the things that I'll do when tomatoes aren't in season, well, if tomatoes are in season, instead of using a canned tomato, I would use 2 fresh tomatoes. And again, we put in here 2 zucchinis, 1 medium-sized eggplant, 1 red pepper. What's also nice about this dish is it's not particularly expensive to make. All right, so now while that's setting up, we have our potatoes in the oven, and the way that we're gonna serve our potatoes is we're gonna serve them on a bed of watercress. And I like doing this with greens. And so while this is kind of going, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock because we're gonna have that fish is gonna finish off in here. And one of the things you have to realize is we're gonna have to move the fish out of the, we're gonna drain the pan, we're gonna put the fish on the board, and then we're gonna put the fish back on top of the ratatouille. So while this is going, and look, it's getting all this kind of depth in here. If you're not using, again, if you're not using fresh tomatoes, you'd use 2 fresh tomatoes, you can use a can of it. Another thing that I like to do is that it's nice that flavor that fresh tomatoes have is that sometimes if it's in the middle of the winter and I want that brightness, I will use canned tomatoes and then add in a fresh tomato. So that's really good. So here we go, and that's really getting some nice heat. I kind of want to, let's see if I can find myself a spoon somewhere. Take a little, this is such a bad habit, but a little taste. That's got some really good flavor to it, which is nice. And you can see it's starting to break down and get a little more moisture to it. And what's gonna happen is that all of this is the vegetables are gonna get a little bit softer and they're gonna put off some liquid and it's gonna really come together and it's gonna be this beautiful bed. All right, I'm gonna check on our fish because that should be coming out right now. That's looking really, really nice. Our potatoes are in there doing what they're supposed to be doing. Again, this is something that you can make ahead. So the ratatouille, the vegetable component to it, wow, listen to that sound. Oh my God, I'm so excited. The fish is not cooked all the way through, but it's definitely doing what it's supposed to do. Like you can take a little poke and it's still a little bit soft. So I'm gonna let this cook down a little bit more. What I was saying is that this part of the dish you could do ahead of time. So honestly, you could make it the day ahead. It's actually wonderful when all the flavors blend together. Make this the day ahead. You know, you could do your potatoes the day ahead. And then really all that you're doing for your dinner party is basically heating this up and then roasting the potatoes. And I like this because I really do enjoy seeing my friends on the weekend and cooking and hanging out with them. But sometimes my days get away from me. I know that like my children all play sports or whatever's going on, or we all have crazy lives. My gosh, I wish you could smell this, you'd go bonkers. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this fish over here, which is pretty straightforward. We're letting that sit for a second. I'm gonna let this, actually you can see now is that it's really starting to reduce down. And the zucchini may seem like it's very, like it's holding its shape, but you can tell zucchini's cooking because it starts to kind of get a softer look to it. It actually, which sounds weird, but you would know it if you see it, and it definitely is true. Okay, great, so let's do this. This is over here, and I'm gonna take the fish, and I have this really lovely, this is just a great thing to have in your kitchen, this really large spatula. And the nice thing about having a meaty fish like this is you don't have to worry about it falling apart. Like it would be kind of tricky, you wanna keep that tail tucked under. It would be tricky to do this with like a, I don't know, like a flounder, which I love, but I think would be harder. So there are all these little veggies. I'm gonna take the bay leaves off. I'm gonna take the herbs. Now this seems very counterintuitive, but it's actually incredibly important. We're gonna dump all the liquid that's in there. We wanna take that liquid out. Ooh, drop my mat, there we go. I'm back, it's like a whack-a-mole. Alrighty, we're just gonna dump all this liquid out. We don't want this, that's our cooking liquid, that's gone. All right, so what we're gonna do now, and this is gonna go back in the oven for, you know, anywhere from 9 to 10 minutes. We just really want the flavors to come together. And then here we go. So that wonderful veggie mix is going right there. Looks so pretty, doesn't it? I absolutely love it. And I love the vibrancy of colors and, you know, they're all together. We're gonna take the fish and we are just gonna put it right back onto the veggies. There we go. How lovely is that? Perfection. Alrighty. And then that's gonna go right back in the oven and we're gonna finish the fish in that way. And while that's going on, we're gonna get the whole thing for the potatoes ready. And the potatoes are really getting a nice little sizzle to them. And again, the secret is the fact that we did them ahead. So the fish goes in, potatoes come out. And I mean, this is pretty straightforward, I gotta tell you. I mean, this is home style cooking at its best. That's gonna finish. Now, while those guys, you can, I mean, listen to that. You can hear, if I stop yapping, you can hear them. And that's the kind of sizzle that you want. And it's just, I'm telling you, the secret, and it took me a while, the absolute secret to doing this is that you have to cook your potatoes ahead of time. And that's, if you've ever been in London or the UK and they have those absolutely lovely roasty potatoes, that's the secret. So what we're gonna do is I have a loaf of bread. I love bread, so I always serve it with everything. We have just a little tray here that I have some watercress that I just rinsed and wrapped in a paper towel. I love watercress. Whenever I can see it, I get it. And we may want to dry this off just a touch more because we don't really want to put something super damp on like roasty, crispy potatoes. And so let's see, here we go. And it's very light, I'm not overly handling it. Watercress has a wonderfully peppery, lemony taste to it, but it bruises easily. So you have to be a little bit sensitive to it. You know, it's a sensitive vegetable, you know, it's got a point of view. All right, so what I'm doing here is I just have my wooden platter and I am taking the watercress there, and the way I'm gonna season this is that I want a little bit of brightness on there. So I have a lemon, half a lemon, you can do more if you want, and I'm just gonna squeeze that over the watercress. Now keep in mind, this is something you wanna do towards the end when you're gonna serve, because lemon is an acid, which means it will break down and cook your watercress, and you don't want that. I'm gonna do a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. There you go. You want to season salt and pepper, so ta-da. Alrighty, and again, a little salt. And just remember, it's not that we're using copious amounts of salt with things, we're just doing enough to add a little brightness of flavor. The leftover goes over your shoulder for good luck. It's a little superstitious. And now what we're gonna do is we are gonna have, so we have this lovely bed, it's all set to go. And we're gonna find our oven mitts so we don't fry our hands. And we're gonna put these lovely, lovely roasty potatoes on top of the watercress. And what's great about this is that you now have taken the potatoes and turned them into this amazing salad. It has all that lovely garlic oil on there. We don't wanna lose that. I don't wanna burn myself. Cooking can be a little tricky. There we go. Okay, fabulous. So that's over there. And we're just gonna move these around so they're kind of gumped up in the, we want to pile in the middle, but we also want it so anyone who takes some of the salad gets it. You know, I think this is also a moment where we could possibly put a little more lemon on there if we wanted to. Kind of stacking up my mess over here. All right, so here we go. We've got this lovely salad. I mean, this is just, I want to show you guys over here what this looks like. We can get a little shot down camera. I mean, how pretty is that if we ignore the ugly roasting pan? But I mean, that's a really pretty dish. And what's nice about that is there's a kind of, it's a nice when everyone can kind of eat family style. We eat family style in my family a lot because it's easier than putting everything plated. All right, so I'm gonna have that sitting there, and I'm just thinking that the fish is getting ready to be done. But while we're doing that, and it's gonna come out, is that what would you wanna serve this meal with? And so a big part of how when I entertain is I like my friends and family to feel like it's an experience. And so part of that experience is setting a pretty table. So I always think of Provence as having a beautiful yellows and blues. So what I did was I picked, I'm gonna find it for you, I'm gonna let that sit for a second, is I chose a plate, I don't know if we can see it from over here, but here, let me see if I can show this up here. A place setting that has this really pretty yellow and blue floral pattern, which feels like very Provence-y and wonderful. And I paired that with this kind of casual yellow napkin. And again, these are daytime colors. Everyone would think of yellow and blue as being daytime, but actually I think they're wonderful for a dinner party. I mean, I think it's sometimes nice to have things that are on the table that are unexpected. And I think we don't have to be married to dark colors for the nighttime. Like, we can do really pretty bright ones. And I also did that like on a really pretty rattan placemat. And then again, I like to serve this type of meal with really lovely crusty bread and then also butter on the table. I am a huge fan of bread and butter. I know it's fallen out of favor and, you know, we're all so careful about what we eat, but I think that we all deserve to treat ourselves sometimes, and that is definitely bread and butter, which is so lovely. So what I would do is I would put out a bowl with some really, like a little pretty bowl with some sliced bread in it, freshly sliced bread. And if it's fresh and beautiful, it doesn't have to be toasted. You know, I put that out with it. Let's move this aside. And then, oh my gosh, that fish just looks absolutely perfect. I mean, I could not be any happier. So let's put this out. And here we go. So we're getting close. And now, in a very few minutes, I mean, if you think about it, in a matter of under 27 minutes, we have put together this meal, which has this beautiful fish in it. and it's screeching hot, so I'm gonna put it up like this. We have this beautiful fish that has vegetables in it, and we have a watercress salad with a lemon vinaigrette on it with roasted potatoes. And then we have bread, and it's this really beautiful meal that we've put together for our family and friends. We have done it in under half an hour. There is some prep time, but it's very nominal. And again, most of this meal can be made ahead. You can prep your vegetables, your ratatouille and vegetable melange the day before and have that ready to go. You can do the same thing with your potatoes. And then, you know, you have your lettuce, your watercress, or whatever green you want to use. And then all of a sudden, you have this beautiful meal. You could also, I mean, for dessert, I think this would be, I'm a big fan of, I love to bake, but sometimes it's just too much to do everything. So you could serve it with like a beautiful fruit tart, or, you know, a cheese course would actually be beautiful afterwards. I mean, it's really kind of never ending. And so let me show you how I would serve this up, just so you can see it. I use very simple serving utensils when I entertain. Again, so this is kind of being treated like a salad. So we have those right there. This is by no stretch a fish knife. It's actually a pie knife, but I use it to serve fish. And so look at this wonderful monkfish, which is perfectly cut through. It's got like lots and lots of nice integrity to it still. It's not falling apart. It's beautiful. There we go. And we're just gonna put it right here. We're gonna make sure that we scoop up plenty of these veggies, right? We really wanna have a lot of these veggies. Okay, so we got that serving on right there. Make sure we got everything off that we have. And then we're just gonna take a little bit of our veggies, our potatoes on our watercress, and we're gonna go right here. And you end up with this absolutely well-balanced meal that has all the flavor components that you could ever want to it. And I'm just gonna bring it so you can, I'm trying to think the best way to show you, and there you can see. And this is this lovely dish you can share with your family and friends. Bon appetit.